I kind of always knew I wanted to own something. Really random. I was like the student body treasurer, and there was a t-shirt company that would call me all the time. And this t-shirt company was just like not getting paid on time. I was like, I can get you paid faster if you give me 10%. So then I started a t-shirt business, and I think junior year of high school was making like 10 grand a year, which, in high school, it's kind of a lot of money.
Great for then.
I ended up buying the vice president of my high school's Porsche off of him.
Really?
Yeah. At the end of the day, like the way agencies grow is like either your clients spend more money with you, means their company's getting bigger, or you get more bigger clients.
Is freedom the draw for you? Like, what
100%.
fuels you? Yeah.
100%. I mean, I just want to eat dinner wherever I want and relax, take my parents out. In general, if someone's selling their business, you have to be like, what the fuck is wrong with this thing?
Yeah. Why are you selling it?
Yeah, like why? Let's say you pay 3 times earnings for a company.
Right.
What people don't realize is we live in California, so 55% taxes. So that means that I got to make 6 times in order to just get my capital back.
Ugh.
A lot of the guys that are selling their AI companies want crazy valuation.
Oh, that's true.
So I'm like, this just doesn't make sense, and you're probably going to get crushed when ChatGPT decides to go into your vertical.
Welcome to Just Go Grind, a show all about building and investing in companies. Today on the show, we've got Shawn Sheikh, the co-founder and managing partner of Adly, a company that acquires, partners with, and invests in internet businesses. Before that, he built and scaled PivotCMO, one of the fastest growing performance marketing agencies, which was eventually acquired, and he also co-founded a YC-backed startup that he exited. Scaling a business isn't just about driving growth. It's about having the right financial infrastructure in place so you don't run into cash flow issues, messy expense tracking, or inefficient capital use. That's why I want to take a moment to highlight Ro, the all-in-one finance platform built for startups and high-growth businesses. With Ro, founders get a single pane of glass that they can use to run and scale their business. Bank accounts, corporate cards, expense management, bill pay automation, and accounting to help them move as fast as they scale. Ro is trusted by thousands of companies, from 2-person YC startups to brands like Perplexity, Cal.com, Splitwise, and more. The big thing with Ro, every customer has a person at Ro. 24/7 customer support. That's phone, text, email. They will be with you at every critical milestone in your startup's journey. To learn more about why startups choose Ro, visit ro.co today. That's RHO.co today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Tribe, a vetted network for top early to mid-stage entrepreneurs. Join the entrepreneurship community, connecting the fastest rising entrepreneurs, founders, and business owners at tribehq.co. Now let's go on to this episode with Shawn Sheikh. Shawn, lots to talk about today. You've sold businesses, you started business, like so many things you've done already. Now you're investing. Have you always been wired with this ambition, this drive to create stuff? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I kind of always knew I wanted to own something.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I started the first business in high school.
Yep.
Sort of on accident. Basically, this teacher that I had in this computer class was like, oh, there's this one student that started a website development company, and he's making, whatever he was making a year. And I was like, I can build websites. Like, that's not that hard, WordPress website. So did that in high school. And then really random, I was like the student body treasurer, and there was a t-shirt company that would call me all the time. Because I would, interestingly, like in high school, they like let you sign checks.
Yeah.
So I was signing checks for this t-shirt company because in high school, like that's where most of your money is spent on like school spirit. Of course. And this t-shirt company was just like not getting paid on time. And I was like, I can get you paid faster if you give me 10%. So then I started a t-shirt business, and I think junior year of high school is making like 10 grand a year, which, in high school, it's kind of a lot of money.
Great for then, especially.
Yeah. So I think like when you're in that situation, you're like, I have money, like I can take girls on dates, I ended up buying the vice president of my high school's Porsche off of him.
Really?
Yeah. So then I was like,
the world's open to me.
Yeah. I was like, I should probably do more of this. And then so, I was like, okay, you can make money. Like,
there's no going back at that point. Once you've seen
there's no going back.
I love it. I love it. I know we talked a while ago. For people who don't have context, I interviewed in 2019, so like almost 6 years ago, whatever it was. I still want to give context for people who hadn't heard that interview. So in thinking about Solve, let's maybe start with that company. So you started a company before that, but with Solve, how did you meet your co-founder, decide to start this business? It went through YC, all this stuff, but how did it get started in the first place?
Yeah, kind of got lucky. I had started a dating app out of college. We raised some money.
Yeah.
It grew to like a couple 100,000 users, but ultimately, like it kind of fizzled out. We sold the company to another dating company that was trying to expand to the US. And one of the guys that wrote one of the first checks into that company, we kind of just became friends. And really successful guy. His name's Blaine. Thank you, Blaine. And when I unwinded the company, I was like kind of embarrassed. I was like, hey man, like sorry, like it just didn't work out, whatever. He was like, oh, I'm thinking about starting this like travel concierge company. Like, do you want to come join and work for me? And I wasn't like a co-founder or anything. Like I was just there to learn. And I was like 22 or something and working for this guy that was ultra successful. And then I just hustled hard. And I remember being on a flight to London with him. And he's like, hey, I really appreciate everything you do. Like, here's some equity. Like, I want you to be a co-founder, like all of that. So, I think like, and my dad thought it was crazy. I turned down like $125,000 a year banking job to go work for Blaine. Blaine didn't like, it was a startup, right? Like he paid me, but it wasn't like a lot.
Not crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was like, you know what? Like this guy's ultra successful. I want to be this guy one day. Like, let me just go and absorb as much as I can. And, ended up working out in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, you guys sold pretty quickly actually, right? Like a year and a half or something? Less than that maybe?
It was like, yeah, a year and a half in. There were some other circumstances like, Blaine, my co-founder at the time, had another company that he sold right when we were in YC. At the time, like he asked me to step up and like be CEO. I really didn't want to do it without him. So I ended up selling to one of our like biggest customers. Hindsight, like thank God I didn't own a travel company during COVID because it would have destroyed her business. But
there's no future after that.
No.
For that particular company at least. I actually didn't know the dating company. I didn't know you raised money for that company too.
Like not a crazy amount.
What's not a crazy amount?
It was like $150K.
Okay.
I'll tell you a really funny story. So where I went to college, one of the professors was managing director of Bessemer Venture Partners.
Oh, wow.
And he just taught a class because he's just a good guy. And like, it was like the best class I've ever taken. He's just one of those dudes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so flew up. I was living back here and I kind of emailed him. I was like, hey, can I get a meeting? Ask for advice. Really, I wanted money. There's the saying, ask for advice, get money. Ask for money, get advice. So I was like, can I get advice? And I remember the night before I went out with a bunch of my friends and I was ultra hungover in the morning. And so I was meeting him on campus at where I went to college and I went down to the cafe to get a vitamin water. And I remember that this guy, every single time he came to our class, he would have yellow vitamin water. I was like, okay, yellow vitamin water actually had one this morning. It has caffeine. It has like B12. Like this is perfect for a hangover. You know what? I'm going to get this guy one too. So I buy him a vitamin water and then we have this good meeting. I'm like, hey, Mr. Tandra, here's the vitamin water. He goes, holy shit, you remember this? I was like, yeah, like, you always come to class with one. He thought I went out of my way. I was really just hungover.
I'll get one too. Yeah.
And 30 minutes in the meeting, he's like, cool, I'll write you a check for $100K. I was like, really? He's like,
are you sure?
I was like, why? He goes, no one remembers the vitamin water thing. Like the fact that you remember that. I was like, yeah, I remember that.
You're like, I'm so lucky.
Yeah, I was like, this is the best whatever $2 I've ever spent in my entire life.
I think that's a good return on that.
Yeah, it's
spend as
nice
well.
Little.
Wait, going from that though, so even with Solve, the first company, I know you started the agency, so PivotCMO. When you were running Solve, you said you weren't really ready to do it without Blaine, at least at that time. What was it about PivotCMO that you were ready to start that company? And that was with Fred, right?
Yeah, Fred, who's my now partner at Adly.
Yeah, so why were you ready then?
That was totally by accident. We were not ready. I mean, Fred, my co-founder, is really good at growth and running ads and all that. And we were kind of basically I had this year off where I was doing nothing. Yeah. And Fred and I were just bouncing ideas. We wanted to start a tech company. We wanted to do a lot of the stuff that we're doing today, but I had this other friend who was like, hey, my cousin owns this clothing company in LA. They have a shop on Robertson. Can you like help him with his ads? I'm like, no, like I'm not an advertising agency. He goes, well, he'll pay you. I was like, no, it's fine. Like we have some savings. Like we're going to like focus on our whatever startup we're going to do.
Yeah, of course.
He's like, dude, like it'll be 2 hours a week. Like, let me give you $5,000 a month. And I was like, all right, fine. We'll do it for 1 month. Okay. The guy ends up going from like, I don't know, almost nothing in online sales to like $500,000 a month in online sales.
Damn.
And,
What?
so then we're like, oh, like, hey, maybe you should pay us more. And then, I think within a year, we were doing like $800K in profit. Fred and I basically looked at each other like, let's just do this.
This is the thing.
Let's make some money. And then it ended up becoming a business. Granted, like we were pretty scrappy and pretty lucky. I think slightly like right place, right time. Also, like a lot of the YC founders came on board, and YC used to be very anti-ads, like don't run ads, have a good product. Now they still are like, obviously you have to have a really good product, but run some ads to get people to try it and then iterate type of a thing. Yeah. So we were kind of at that age where like a lot of the YC companies had some ad budget and working with us, and we were good. Like I think that's what that was.
Give me backstory on Fred, because obviously you're still working with Fred today. So how'd you meet him? Decide to work together? Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So Fred's a few years younger than me. We went to college together, and I was in this when I was running the dating app. Fresh out of college, there's this like incubator called the Delta Prize. They take like 10 companies, they incubate you. At the end, you like showcase your company, and then if you win, like they write you a check. I think it was like 10K or something like that. Right. So I ended up winning. And the guy that ran that program at Berkeley, he runs a summer program too. And he texted me and he's like, hey dude, like I have this kid. He's just as annoying as you are. You should meet him. I think you guys will really hit it off. So we end up meeting. We hit it off, but Fred was still in college. And he would like just call me all the time, like, hey man, like, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think about this idea? What do you think about this idea? Like, he's just one of those like really smart people that like tries a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we just kept in touch, and he was working at a like pretty well venture-backed startup doing growth, and we just wanted to start something together. And he's the one co-founder that I've had that like we never fight ever. Interestingly, we get along really well. Like we're very different people. It just clicks. And I've been through a lot of co-founders, and I've fought with all of them except for this one. I don't know why, but
like how are decisions made then? You just always kind of agree, or you're accepting of the other person's view? Like
no, we don't always agree, but we're very rational. We're very data driven. Yeah. I think the thing about us that we realized is like, you don't have to be right. You just have to try things and like move on really, really fast. Yeah, and like I tell a lot of my employees now, I'm like, look, I don't care if it works or not. Try it fast, kill it faster. And then, you're probably going to try 10 things and 9.5 are not going to work.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay. Like
you make more progress that way than delaying and not try.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So.
Wait, so PivotCMO. So when we had chatted, you were still running the agency. That was back in 2019. So you sold it in 2022?
Yeah, March 2022.
Why sell it? What was that process like?
We weren't going to. Actually, I was on the phone with the head of marketing at Crocs, like trying to pitch them to use us. And he was like, hey, by the way, I sold an agency. I was like, why would you sell the agency? Like, it makes a lot of money. Like, you should keep it. Like, it's cash cow, right? He was like, look, just talk to this one broker and, just talk to him. I was like, okay. So I talked to the broker and he's like, look, you should partner with like a bigger agency that can bring you bigger clients, and it'll just make your life easier. Because at the end of the day, like the way agencies grow is like either your clients spend more money with you, means their company's getting bigger, or you get more bigger clients. And we partnered with an agency that was like way bigger than us, and it made sense. We love the guys and all that. So
running that company though, so I just want to touch a little bit on it. Like you grew that company. Who knows how many people did you have by the end of it?
I don't know. I mean, not that many actually. Like maybe 30 people.
30 people. Okay. Yeah. And working with clients, you said I know from our last interview, in the early days, I think you said a lot of it was like email outreach worked a bit in the beginning or something like that. How did that grow by the end of it?
Email outreach was everything.
Still?
I mean,
Yeah.
we sent a lot of spam.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point where we were emailing 5 to 10,000 people a day.
Jesus.
My LinkedIn was aggressive. We had a team doing that.
Yep.
Sales is a numbers game at the end of the day. And, you know, agencies at this point are very dime a dozen. Yep. Everyone and their mother has an agency.
Seems like it, yeah.
The difference is like how intense you want to be, like signing clients, like how aggressive you want to be. Like that's really it. And Fred and I were very hands-on. Like we were very operational. I think that's the other thing that mattered a lot.
Were you more sales, him on the growth? Like how was that split?
Yeah, it was more like sales, operations, human ops, whatever you want to call it. And then I ran the SEO team, and then he ran all the paid teams and all the strategists and stuff like that.
You had been through, so selling that company, how did that differ? Or how was that experience in terms of the actual like process? How long did that take? Because I've heard so many different stories around. It took 6 months to close. It took a year to close. It, you know, like how was that process for anyone selling a business or wants to sell a business?
That one was a little longer.
Yeah.
Just given the nature of the business, it was like 4 or 5 months. And I think the fit mattered a lot because we owned a percentage still afterwards, and we wanted to stick around afterwards. So finding the right person was important, and inherently it's a very people-run business. So you just need to find the right person. So that took some time. I've bought stuff where it took 60 days, which is, due diligence, legal, closing, like that's actually pretty quick, like 45, 60 days, whatever that is. So, yeah.
I know when I talked in 2019, at that point in time with the business, I'm trying to think of like the growth trajectory. I think you had already been starting to buy businesses though, right? At that point, or like, I think you maybe mentioned in the interview something about buying a business or two already by that point in time.
We had bought some like domains, and we were like incubating things.
Yeah.
Many of which did not work. 2022 to 2020, end of 2024, we bought a lot of stuff. We bought 13 companies, like really grew the portfolio. That's not including like domains that we bought, like things that we're like testing out. So we've always been trying.
What was that thought process? So even working with Fred on that, he's your partner at Adly, you're running now, your investment firm. What was the thought process between you guys along, okay, we're moving on from this agency to we're going to start buying companies, investing in companies, and then doing that side of the business world versus what you were doing before? Like, what was the thought process behind that?
Also very serendipitous.
Yeah.
Him and I were going to like work on stuff, but very casually.
Yeah.
In fact, we were looking at buying a winery. To chill on in Paso. So my now wife and him and his girlfriend, we all like went to Paso. We looked at a 60-acre winery, and I was like, I'm going to live here and chill and be done. And somebody brought us a deal and was like, look, I really want to buy this company. I need some investment. Like, do you want to do it with me? And we're like, okay, whatever. And I remember being on the jitney in New York from Long Island going into Manhattan and just like grilling this founder, like, why should we buy your company? Blah, blah, blah. And then we kind of just took a leap of faith. So Fred and I bought the majority of that company. That's the only company where there's some outside investors. And, within a few months of us running it, like it grew like crazy. So Fred and I looked at each other like, we should do more of this.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
That worked.
This is working. And it was an interesting time in the market. Like, things were reasonable valuation.
Yeah.
We knew how to grow things. And I realized that starting things is really hard. Like we're really good at like taking things that exist and ran a marketing agency. So, can sort of make things grow.
Can make you explode from where you were at.
That's the idea.
That's your expertise for sure.
Yeah. That's kind of the idea. And, thankfully a lot of the brokers that we talked to like guided us through the process. We have since refined the process, like structuring how we structure deals, how we do legal, all of that. So that's been
with that first one though. So like with that first deal, did you buy it in the intention of like, all right, we have this growth experience. We kind of already know what we're going to do with it once we bought it, or like going to let them run it still? Or are you trying to like kick the CEO out? Like what was the, explain that.
Yeah. So what it was is this site called doublelist.com, and it's a dating site. It basically took over what Craigslist Personals was, but with a lot more moderation, and like it's just like a great like dating site.
Yeah.
And the guy was monetizing it with just display advertising. And for anyone that's used a dating product, that you need like a subscription product. Yeah. And so the idea was buy the company, be better at advertising, get more like advertising units, and then build this subscription product. And we did that. And like, that's really what worked. I think the company is like 4x since we bought it.
Jeez.
The team is small. Actually, the team's getting bigger now. It's probably like 30 people, 25, maybe something like that, with developers, moderators, all of that. So,
yeah. So going from that then, so you guys bought that business. You're like, all right, we're going to do more of this because this obviously worked. You liked it enough. How did you think about that expansion? Because you said you had investors for that one, so outside investors for that one. Now is it all your own capital, or are you still trying to get like, what's the deal?
Yeah, all of our own capital. I mean, even for that, like Fred and I own Adly owns the vast majority of that company. And the outside investors were this guy that brought us the deal, like his cousins and mom and dad. Like, it wasn't like institutional or anything.
Gotcha.
And in fact, like, we were like, hey, we'll take the whole deal, but he had already like had people committing capital, and they have become our friends. But yeah, everything else has only been our own capital. I mean, my parents were like, you're an idiot. Like, because we bet the entire, like, everything that we had
on that one.
Even the guy, like, private wealth managers were like, what the fuck is wrong with
Why
you
guys?
Why
are you so dumb?
Like, go buy a nice house, like, get a nicer car. Like, what's wrong with you?
How do you stick to your guns on that and do it?
We're young, like, I think it was one of those things where it's like, I don't need this. Like, the joke is everything is for my kid's kid. So,
that's true.
I think that was that. We wanted to like build LTV. We wanted to build something that like is going to last a while, and we just had a lot of energy, and we still do. Like, I think that's what that is. The numbers made a lot of sense. I mean, the one nice part about my co-founder is extremely data driven. He's very like, well, if you look at the math, like, this deal's a no-brainer. I'm like, well, when you put it that way, sure. Like, let's bet our entire net worth.
Yeah. Casual.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that.
Okay. So then you buy that business, you want to grow this thing. Did you consider outside capital as like raising a kind of investment vehicle fund in that way? Or do you always like, we have enough money to start to buy the next one. We're going to do that piece by piece by piece. Like, how did you think through that side of things?
Yeah. And people keep pushing me to like raise outside capital. I think the thing is, a lot of people think like buy a business, the way you make money is to grow it and like sell it. That doesn't have to be the case. Like, buy or start a business that's profitable and then keep it forever. Like, that's what if you go into like any nice neighborhood, most people own a business that does pretty well. Like, and I don't mean like anything super fancy. Like, I know a guy that runs the local State Farm branch that does pretty well, right? He started it. He has like a little location, he's making a couple $100,000 a year. Like, that's pretty good.
Yep.
So I think we realize like those are the types of business that we like, and we don't want other people calling, hey, when are you going to sell? Hey, when are you going to do this? Like, the
pressures of outside capital.
It's just so much bullshit, like dealing with people, and you just don't want to be beholden to anyone. I also will say, I mean, we started small. Like, you don't need to buy a big company at the gate. We've since sized up our deals because, things are going in the right direction. But I get calls like every week, like, hey, I saw that you bought stuff. Can we talk about it? I'm like, yeah, cool. Like, how much capital do you have? Like, I talked to a guy 2 weeks ago. He's like, I have about $1 million. I have a HELOC on my house. I'm going to like take some margin on my stocks. Got $1 million. I was like, cool. Don't spend $1 million. Spend like 250 and then learn, and then, make some money, and then like, then go spend $1 million like later.
Give us a ballpark. So you said smaller ones have gotten bigger. What is that? What size now, even for like people listening, looking at like working with you, for instance, like now is way different than when you started. Like, what size deals in general? Did you already have an idea in your head of like what that was going to be? Tell us more about that.
Look, we bought stuff as small as like things that are doing like 10 to 100K a year in revenue. We bought stuff as big as like, they're doing a couple $1 million in ARR.
Yeah.
We have put out offers for things that are like tens of millions of dollars. In those cases, we would use some leverage, obviously. We haven't done a deal that big, but we've done deals like in the low double digit millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I don't think like size is a blocker or whatever. Like, I still love small things that can be big, but if we find big things, great. The valuations also are an issue, because when you get into like over, $5 million of EBITDA, then like valuations are crazy, and then it doesn't make so much sense unless you're going to flip, right? Like, like I like to call Adly like private equity. Like because we don't have investors, it's better to just make things profitable and keep them forever versus if you're a PE firm, you buy, you grow, you flip, right? So the valuations don't matter. They matter, but like they don't matter as much. You're also using other people's money, so it's a little bit more palatable.
You mentioned that like outside investors part of it. Like, is freedom the draw for you? Like, what 100%. Fuels you? Yeah,
100%. I mean, I just want to eat dinner wherever I want and relax. Take my parents out. Like, someone was like, "Hey, maybe you guys should IPO." I was like, "Never."
No,
like I don't want to be that public. Like, it's not.
The crazy part though is too, if you think about with what you're doing, if it keeps compounding and you keep investing in more business, like there's no reason it can't get really, really big anyways. Like really, really,
goal.
like,
that's the goal. Yeah.
I've seen who else is doing like Enduring Ventures stands out, Tiny stands out. Like there's ones like obviously Tiny went public, but different situation. Like they can get big. Like what is your, not the end game, but like what do you want to be doing? Freedom is one part of it. Cool. So you want to maintain freedom. Maybe it changes where you at some point get outside capital if it makes sense ever, but you don't want to sacrifice freedom. But like what is the end game, or like what do you want this thing to be?
I mean, there is no end game. I think inevitably we will sell stuff because there are things that we just don't want to work on anymore or it makes sense to sell. We're issuing equity to a lot of our employees now, so we want to make sure that they get something out of it. So we want to sell things.
Some liquidity.
We do have a lot of businesses in the portfolio that are like mailbox money, right? Like they're there. I don't think about them that much. I get a check every month. It's great. Like
lovely. It's
good for my kids and all that. So yeah, I mean, I really no end game. Like, and I think that's okay. Like, I think a lot of people are so focused. I want to sell my company and retire on a beach. Okay, you're gonna do that, and then you're gonna go back to work out like in a week. Like,
especially because you're super ambitious and you're not gonna be able to just turn it off.
Well, that and like, do you want your wife just yelling at you all day at home? Like
the truth comes out.
Right? Like, I love my kid, but like, do I really want to spend that much
all day?
Yeah.
Maybe some balance there.
Yeah, I think it's that. And then also, while I was driving here, I was actually thinking about this. I was like, well, like give jobs to my friends. I can, hire my friends' kids. Like, it's good. Like, hopefully my kid will take over the business. Like, a little bit of nepotism is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those are like the ultimate goals. Like, how do you build something that feeds your family forever and their kids and their kids? And
it's funny you mentioned I was just like listening to Invest Like the Best. Actually, it wasn't Invest Like. It was like an interview with Patrick O'Shaughnessy, host of Invest Like the Best. And he was talking about how like he doesn't have an end goal either. He's just like, we want to make 10 out of 10 podcast episodes. I want to keep working with people who are doing their life's work and keep funding them and just keep growing everything. Like there's no like this goal, this date, this whatever. You just like want to keeps doing the thing. And that compounds, that grows over time, but you're enjoying the process of it. Like that is the main thing. With what you're doing too, you start with that small deal, you've done bigger deals, you can even do larger deals. Take us through the deal process. Like where's your deal flow coming from as a starting point? And I want to know more than how you're evaluating deals.
Yeah. So I want to say like 60 to maybe 70% of the deals came from brokers.
Okay.
And the brokers have been really good to us. We've got deep relationships with them now.
How'd you find them, the brokers?
Honestly, like just Googling and
really?
A lot of Googling, a lot of like knocking on doors. And then like asking those brokers like, hey, where else should we look?
Yeah.
So that, most of that's there. And then the rest is like manual outreach. We've tried a lot of different manual outreach methods. It's painful. A lot of the deals that we did were like buying competitors of companies we already own.
Yeah.
That is easy because you have a target. You can like reach out to the founders. You can be aggressive, all of that. These days, I mean, I probably get like 3 to 5 deals to my inbox a day. Granted, like a lot of them aren't qualified. Like we're not in the e-commerce business, for example. Like we don't buy e-commerce companies. Not opposed to it, we just haven't. So those are auto delete. But I'll say like if we look at 3 to 5 deals a day, let's just say on average we look at 4 deals a day, so 120 a month. We might get on 2 phone calls with the founders. We have a long due diligence checklist that we'll send over. Usually it's like a week of DD, a week of quality of earnings, like making sure like what they say they're making is what they're making. And then legal is just however long legal takes. We're usually really, really quick. Like, we're lucky to have like a few attorneys that we work with really well.
Do you have any, whether it be like frameworks or you said obviously due diligence checklist is one thing, but like frameworks for deals you're looking at, what are you looking for? What gets you excited? I'm kind of like trying to dive into your mind. You're like, what does Shawn see? And he's like, that's interesting. Like, what is it?
Yeah. So number one, in general, if someone's selling their business, you have to be like, what the fuck is wrong with this thing?
Yeah. Why are you selling it?
Yeah. Like why? And then like you get on the phone with these founders and like, well, it's a great business. Like it makes money forever. I'm like, well, then why the fuck are you selling it? Yeah, like, you know, so like you have to, I think that's like thing number one, like be ultra skeptical. We like recurring revenue, like anything subscription we love. We like software. We like high margin, which is inherently software. We like things with like not that big of a team either because we can put our team in there. And then I think the thing is we stick to our expertise. Like we're really good at paid ads. We're really good at SEO.
Yep.
Can these things benefit from paid ads? Can these things benefit from, SEO?
Yeah.
We're pretty good at like product fixes, like CRO stuff. Like our director of product, Austin, is awesome. Like does a really good job, brings the company in, and like just a couple small changes to like the purchase flow, like can unlock like whatever. So I think those are the things that we're inherently looking for. I got dinner with my jeweler the other day. I don't wear much jewelry. My jewelry, my wife's jeweler. He's become a friend, and he's like, he took over his dad's business, and he goes, "Hey, Shawn, like, I want to start a coffee business." I'm like, "Fuck no." How about expand the jewelry business? Like, if you just increase your business by 5%, it'll be way bigger than this coffee business that you want to start. Trust me, and you're already really good at it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if you want to buy something, like think about what your expertise are and then just double down on that. Like don't try to do random shit because it sounds cool. You saw it on a YouTube video or whatever the case is. Like, I talked to another guy that's like really good at sales, but he wants to go run like a software business that requires like SEO and paid ads. I was like, do you know anything about SEO or paid ads? He goes, no, I'll hire an agency. I'm like, dude, just buy a business where you can go sell some enterprise contracts.
Yeah.
You'll do really well. You're so good at sales. Like, why would you get away from like what you're already really good at,
Yeah. That makes sense. So wait, because that's like one part of it though. So red flags, what about that? So you're looking it through, obviously you're asking them, why you're selling this business. What are red flags either from that or from the diligence, like things you're like, we can't live with, can't do this deal?
I mean, the P&Ls are very telling usually. My dad is an accountant and he was like really forceful on like me having to know accounting, even though I never wanted to be an accountant. So I think anyone that's like going to do this, like go take an accounting class, like the P&Ls are so telling. So that's thing number one, like, is the business growing? Is it dying? Like, what are the growth levers here? So that's generally pretty telling. Just looking at traffic and ranking data is like really important. So like looking at SEMrush, Ahrefs, SimilarWeb, like, are they dying? Like, is the traffic dying? Looking at concentration risk, like, is all of the revenue coming from like 3, customers or something like that? That's scary.
Yeah.
Are they selling because it's inherently dying, which is often the case? Like, are they selling because something's changing in the market? Or, are there a bunch of competitors that have come in? Like, those are all really big red flags. Like, we looked at buying some like SEO tool companies and then Google changed their algorithm. There's a bunch of AI snippets and you start to see the company free fall. And when you have the call with the founder, they're like, yeah, I'm not worried about the Google algorithm, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you are, because you're selling the company.
Yeah.
So
that's not bullshit. Yeah.
And so then one thing that we do is try to ask founders, like, look, if it's such a great business, like, why don't you keep a piece? Like, why don't you keep 10 or 20%? We'll have a clause where, you can force us to buy you any single time, but keep a little bit. Or like, as a part of the deal, like, why don't you do an earnout? Like, I'll pay you quarterly as long as the revenue doesn't go down by X%, like 10% in any quarter, I'll pay you, right? Almost all the good deals that we've done, the founder's like, yeah, it's a great business. Like, of course, like you can do that. Like, no problem. Like, if anything, I can defer some taxes for a year, like whatever the case is, right? When founders are like, absolutely not, like, and they don't have a really good reason for not wanting to keep a little bit, like even 5%, like it's called schmuck insurance, right? Like we sell the company down the road for a lot more and we grow it, like you'll get a lot of money, right? Like is the idea. But I think that's also like, why are you selling and like, why don't you want to keep a piece or why don't you like earnouts? I think that's really important.
Are you typically buying out the entire thing when you're buying companies?
Pretty much always.
You are, okay. So full. Yeah.
Makes sense. So there's like different phases here. So there's seeing the deals is always like the first thing. Are you seeing deals? Then it's like, well, is it a good deal or not? Once you're kind of evaluating that, you also have to be able to get into deals. Like the good deals, they're going to have competition because if everyone has seen it, not saying that everyone has, if multiple people have seen it, obviously there's competition. Why do you win deals at Adly?
I think a couple things. Whenever we talk to founders, I always tell them like, look, we're not a bunch of finance bros. We are gonna transition you out fast to the founder, right?
Yeah.
Like we've run tech companies before. We know what we're doing. I want to not talk to you after 30 days. And I know you don't want to talk to me after 30 days. So like, let's make sure that happens. So I think that on itself is like a big deal, because think about like a private equity firm, right? Like a small private equity firm that's buying smaller companies.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of MBAs buying tech companies. They've never seen a line of code.
Yeah.
You know, they have to have someone set up their email for them. Like it's hard. Like you're going to have this guy calling you every day. Like it's just not fun.
Yeah.
So I think that is like a big one. I think the other thing is, especially in the cases where people are like retaining equity or whatever, like they believe in us. Like they think that we're the right people to run these companies. We have a track record. You know, we'll show them, we'll like open our books and like show them, hey, like if you want to see the P&Ls like for some of these businesses we bought, we're more than happy to show you. And then we have a good relationship with the brokers. Like the brokers like know that we're not full of shit. Like we're going to close.
Yeah.
If we put an LOI out, a letter of intent out, it means something. It's not bullshit. Like I think those are like the main things. And then we move really fast. Like, you know, 45, 60-day close, like that's pretty fast. A lot of that has to do with we're deploying our own capital. So I don't have to like do capital calls. I don't have to like ask a board like if I can spend my own money. Like, you know, I think that's
Like,
really
Fred, we good?
usually Fred's like, Shawn, we good? I was like, I guess. Like, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, sure, why not?
Yeah. So
What does that look like after? Because you have a pretty big team, don't you, at Adly?
we're either 237 or 273. I don't remember.
Either way, it's big. It's like, so after the fact, you're buying out almost the entire company, typically, like full ownership. You guys have all this expertise, like from your background, your history, whatever. Like, what does it look like after?
So it depends. Like some companies come with some staff, which is great. Like keeping, you know, developers, keeping customer service people around is like good because they know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we don't know also. The founders usually leave, and then there are things that our team is good at. So like there are roles at Adly that are almost like agency. So for example, like we have a growth department, we have a Google ad buyer, a Facebook ad buyer. That person, you know, buys ads for like the portfolio of companies.
Yeah.
So they'll go in and like they'll help or whatever the case is. Sometimes we'll replace an agency that most of these companies don't come with ad buyers, like as an example. And then usually the founder was the product person. So we'll bring in one of our product guys, and our product guys are really good. So that happens. And yeah, actually, this is an interesting topic because people are like, okay, like just buy the company and then you run it and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, let's say it's $1 million. Hey, you spend $1 million. It's like, no, like I bought the company for $1 million. I got to invest another whatever afterwards to hire people because I got to replace you, the founder, and all the growth initiatives we want to do. Like they cost money. So like, it's not $1 million. It's like 1.5. Like it's not
way more.
Yeah. And inherently, I think like we've been successful because we get our hands really dirty. Like that's kind of the key. Like, you know, it's hard work, you know?
Well, you pay for the company. It's like you want to make it successful.
Well, that's the thing, right? Okay, so like let's say you pay 3 times earnings for a company.
Right.
What people don't realize is we live in California, so 55% taxes. So that means that I got to make 6 times in order to just get my capital back.
Oh, brutal.
So any ounce of growth we can squeeze out makes the capital return a lot better.
And it's all your capital. So it's just like.
Yeah. But I mean, look, there's equity, right? Value.
Yeah.
Like the companies are worth something. Like if we needed to sell, I like to think that we could sell some of these things. We haven't yet sold much, but you know.
When you guys started, so you had the agency, then you decided to buy more companies. How did you think about the team itself? Like what we were going to need? Did you know right away, like, hey, we're going to be hands-on this whole time. We are going to have to hire a bunch of people because we're going to fill all these roles once we buy these companies. I'm just thinking like, how did you think about what you wanted to build as a firm, you know?
It was really slow. Like I like the idea of hire when it hurts. So the first 2 hires were a growth person, a product person, and then my brother was the ops team with me for a while. He worked at the company. And then we acquired another company, and this product manager kind of got upgraded to director of product, and then he hired like 1 PM at a time. And it sort of snowballed that way. And then obviously like when you buy the companies, like I said, they come with some staff. So like inherently like, okay, like when we bought this dating site, it came with, you know, 8 moderators. The developer was the founder, so we had to hire developers. We had to hire a PM. So it really depends. We didn't hire we didn't plan to hire this many people. It just kind of happened.
You just have 200 some people now.
I mean, a lot of them are customer support, right?
Of course, or contractors or whatever.
Yeah. So it's not like I got 200 people sitting in an office somewhere, but it's gotten interesting.
It's big though.
I guess so.
Wait, so your time is mostly what now? Is it a lot of meetings still, a lot of calls? Obviously, you're the founder. You're still finding more deals, clearly, but you also have this team. Where's your time spent now?
It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of mentoring. I am trying to get away from our team's good, so I'm trying to get away from hey, this is what we have to do, and I'm spending more time on special projects or special initiatives. Like when I was driving here today, I was like, we have no presence on Reddit. Let me think about this. So I was on a call with a bunch of people, figuring that out. Then we'll strategize together. I'll hand it off, and then people will run with it.
Yeah.
I think these days it's a lot of reporting. It's a lot of strategy. We have started an incubator arm to Adly now. So now we're starting companies again. So that's been fun because I like that part of it. It's actually, interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's busy.
Why that part of it, the incubation?
Deals were getting expensive. Valuations are up. Money's getting a little bit cheaper. So I think when the interest rates came down a little bit over the past year, a lot of people are trying to buy stuff. A lot of people are being forced back into offices. They don't want to go. So everyone and their mother is trying to buy a company now. I probably have this conversation weekly. Hey, can you talk to my friend? He wants to do what you do. He wants to buy stuff. I'm cool. And they always start with, I want to buy a laundromat. I'm stop listening to every YouTuber that's talking about laundromat.
Yeah.
There's not laundromats left.
Was it
buy.
Cody Sanchez or something? Whoever her name is? Yeah. Someone.
Yeah. I'm Cody Sanchez owns all the good laundromats.
Yeah. She's already bought them up.
Yeah. It's okay. Buy something else. So there's a lot of people coming in. There's a lot of dumb money. People look at Silicon Valley valuations and are applying that method to private equity. And that's just not, what I want to play in. And then I like starting stuff. It's fun. It's cool. Fred, my co-founder, is dude, you're obsessed with making the first $1,000. We have businesses that if you just grow it 0.5%, it's bigger than this business you're trying to start. I'm yeah, I know, but it's really fun.
But you after freedom and enjoying what you're doing, and you've already made money too. It's not like you're I'm trying to make my first dollar here.
It's watching your kid grow up, hey man, this is pretty cool. I don't know. There's something inherently fun about it.
Oh, I totally get it. It's you just constantly try to figure out how to focus because there's so many different things going on, which is always a struggle. I'm curious about a few of your portfolio companies. You have mix. You have content businesses. You have software, obviously. You have a lot of different things. Why the content businesses? Where does that fit? There's got to be a passion project. There's a watch company. There's that
was a fuck up.
Was it?
That was hey, let's buy one of these and see if it's a good bet. And they're fine. They go well. It's just they're not as growable. We are trying new things and they are growing, but not at the rate that a lot of the software companies are.
Yeah.
So two things. Fred and I sat down and said, hey, should we buy all the same shit? And he's no, because if there's ever a down market, we're not going to get screwed. So for example, these content businesses with all the AI stuff that's going on aren't growing as well as they should. Fine. We only have two or three content businesses. So, that's not a lot of concentration risk. We're not relying on that, right? So that was a test. We have not bought any additional content businesses since. But also we bought those businesses. I'm really into watches. So the watch site's really cool. It's more fun more than anything. So I don't regret it. I'm just saying we did one and maybe let's not do that again.
I looked through it and I was thinking the same thing. I was well, this seems like a fun thing to do.
Yeah, and not everything is about making money. I mean, ideally it is, but
it's your money, it's your capital, so you can do that as well. You're also not justifying that to investors.
Yeah, and so that's actually a good point. I didn't think about that. that's, it's fine. Yeah. And again, inherently they're worth something. So if we really wanted to sell it, we could. But I like it. So
on it's the other end of the spectrum. Kind of this AI, this education, this writing app. It wasn't a writing tool. I think it said the website has 10 million users or some crazy number of millions of you.
It's a lot. Yeah.
What's the name of that?
Smodin.
Yeah. What's the story with that?
It was a good deal. I like the founder a lot. Yeah. And inherently, a lot of the AI companies that are coming out just wrap something around ChatGPT's API. We don't do that. Like they have their own LLM. It actually is good. So like I sat down and I tried all of the like AI content detectors, for example, and ours is actually the best.
Yeah.
We don't do a good job of like packaging well. Actually, a redesign went out yesterday, and we're going to do another round of redesign. So we're working on that. But it's just a good business. Like came with like a large user base. A lot of the users are free users. So, you know, part of the objective is like, how do we convert some of them into paid? And maybe we don't. Like maybe like we should monetize in other ways. Like the site gets a lot of traffic. Like maybe we should run ads. Like I don't know. So, you know, I just like it, and the numbers made sense. The founder's good. The team's really good. Like it checked all the boxes. And, you know, going back to like why people sell, like he was like, look, this is my first business. I love to travel. I want to like, you know, take some money off the table, and I'm going to go like travel. And he actually did. Like this guy called me from Machu Picchu like a month after we bought the company. I was like, dude, I need you to 2FA on your Gmail app. Like he goes, dude, I have like really bad reception of Machu Picchu right now. I was like, bro, I'm trying to get into the Google admin.
Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
I did what I said I was going to do. I'm traveling.
Which is good. Like, I mean, that's a guy that like was, hey, I want to sell my business because of X, Y, and Z. And then he did. So
that makes sense. That one seems to be crushing it. It's the first one listed. I don't know if it's the most recent, but it definitely is crushing it, it seems like.
It's good. I mean, not without its challenges.
Always.
But I like it. Like it's something interesting. Like
on that point of AI, where does that fit into your process at Adly and also what you look at these companies? Because I'm sure you're seeing something.
Yeah, it's a lot of noise, honestly. Like people's like, you should AI everything. I'm like, maybe not everything. Like, yeah, we use it like, you know, to help with the process. We use it to like, if I don't really want to build a spreadsheet model, like use ChatGPT or whatever the case is. So I am cautiously optimistic. It's like, you remember everyone was like, oh, Apple Vision Pro, like, you know, VR is like the next thing. Like, okay, who has a VR headset? Like, you know,
or uses it if they do have it.
Oh yeah, like it's just like the next hot thing, and it's very useful, but I'm cautious about over investing in the space. Like, yeah, it's a little scary.
It's still early, to be fair.
It's early, and then like, you know, maybe next year there's a new, you know, thing that everyone remember. It was like crypto. It was like this, it's that. Like now crypto's getting regulated like crazy. So, you know.
Yeah, it feels like AI is different, but also it's early, and we'll see what you, because people are saying, like, to your point, the kind of ChatGPT wrappers, it's like, well, now you saw like DeepSeek or whatever. Compared to ChatGPT, you're like, oh, wait, maybe that wasn't as important as what's the user interface, and these wrappers can actually be super valuable. So it's interesting to see this kind of back and forth of that. I don't know where that goes exactly, but I am curious. It's like you're seeing a bunch of companies in general because you're obviously buying companies. Like, do you buy some of those companies or not? Like, if
we looked. Yeah, anything that's like a wrapper type of a thing, like we don't buy because, you know, Smodin's good because it inherently has its own tech. Like it's proprietary, so it's actually valuable. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation. A lot of the guys that are selling their AI companies want crazy valuation.
Oh, that's true.
You know, so I'm like, this just doesn't make sense, and you're probably going to get crushed when ChatGPT decides to go into your vertical or whatever. Like,
it's a risk.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, like example, like I have a lot of friends that are using one of the ChatGPT plugins for therapy, and it's supposedly really good. I'm like, great, but there's 30 of them, you know. So if ChatGPT decides tomorrow, like, hey, this one's doing really well. Let me give you a better example. It's kind of like, remember when Amazon was like, cool, Allbirds is doing really well. We're just gonna make Allbirds. It's like, you know, like that can happen, and like you're kind of screwed overnight. So, you know.
It's so hard to like play in that space then, like figure that out. One of the things I want to end on, though, I know we're getting close to time, but I'm curious. You mentioned like starting businesses, obviously incubating businesses. I'm sure a lot of people out here listening to this and like newsletter, podcast, all that stuff, they're starting stuff, or even if they sold stuff before, they're still starting stuff because we're in a very interesting time of the AI stuff, but also it's just so easy to start anything now. How do you approach starting something from scratch? Like, what do you look for? What, just following your interests? Like, tell me more about starting things now.
Yeah, I think it's I don't think we're that good at reinventing the wheel. Like that is not what we're trying to do. I think we see things that work in the market and we're like, One of my old bosses said this to me a long time ago. CEO of Guthrie Ranker, he goes, Shawn, I don't need to be Peloton. If we're Pelotron and we make 1% of what they make, we have a great business, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like inherently that's what we're looking for. Like what exists that we can do slightly better, or what exists like, for example, we bought a company that was monetized on display ads. Like I was saying, like we're really good at paid, so or in subscription products. So like let's just layer this in, like just because they're doing it that way doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. So I'm trying to think of that. I'm also thinking about things that are very simple and like very straightforward. Like I'm not even opposed to buying like brick and mortar, right? Like people are getting away from that. Like we don't have anything, by the way,
yet.
But I'm just saying that like if someone brought us a deal and the numbers make sense and whatever, like we'll do that. So again, I think it's just all about business principles. It's all about looking at data, making sure that we can actually monetize things, and that's inherently it. Like I am not at a place in my life where I want to like go solve cancer or something like that.
Different.
Like it's
Different
just
problem.
not what we're good at, right?
Yeah,
So.
not your experience. Is there anything right now you're like, okay, I would like to start this, I don't have time for it, or I'm getting to it eventually, or like, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I think a lot of the content stuff is interesting. Like I think there's a lot of stuff that we can do with like The Modest Man, for example, that we don't really have time for. It's not necessarily our expertise. So as an example, like our head of growth was like, hey, I'm really into fashion and clothing. Like maybe we should start a clothing brand. And I was like, like everyone and their mother has done it, but it's not a bad idea because we have, a pretty big community for The Modest Man. So maybe it makes sense to do it, right?
Yeah, like where's your competitive advantage?
Yeah. So I think like, maybe we have a lot of platform businesses and there's a lot of stuff that we can expand on.
Yeah.
I actually think that's like kind of interesting. Like we have a lot of businesses that have been, like I was saying, mailbox money that we could probably do a lot with if we just focus. So that's the other thing I've been thinking about a lot is like when you have 18 companies, like no child gets loved the most. So maybe we should be like putting people in charge of, growing this like one sector or like adding features that like are actually pretty good. So I think inherently that's like, how do we start businesses on top of what we already have? Like,
it's a big foundation there already.
Well, get in there.
Yeah.
I want more stuff. So.
There's always more stuff to buy. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe the next thing is a winery. Maybe you come back to it. You're like, oh, Paso Robles. Like, let's come back to that.
Well, how do you make $1 million in wine? You start with 10.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Well, you say you're not trying to make money with everything necessarily. So maybe that's the event.
Yeah, I really love wine. So there's that.
That tie-in with content is interesting. Just from a fun perspective, I feel like it could be interesting. Where's the best place for people to reach out to connect with you if they want to?
Yeah. LinkedIn. You can also email me, Shawn@adly.com. I respond for the most part to everyone's emails. And I'm like happy to be helpful. Like I think there's a lot of like consolidation happening. I think there's a lot of people that want to be doing things, but are just not approaching it the right way. Like I went to dinner with some friends last night and they're like, we want to buy a business. I was like, cool. Like, let's talk about it. Like maybe I can invest. Like that'd be really cool. So that's sort of the idea.
Open opportunities though, all the time.
Yeah, always.
Awesome. Shawn, thanks for the time, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man.